So in this video, I'd like to demonstrate what I've learned as far as scooping with CL-415 goes. Feels like the simulator kind of sets you up for failure by giving you the fire boss, and there's a lot of bad habits you can learn in that because it's got an incredible power to weight ratio that the CL-415 just does not, and they kind of throw you in this monster without any guidance whatsoever. So hopefully this helps people that are struggling. I feel like due to recent events, this is going to be kind of a popular plane for people to try to learn. And so this is what I've learned in kind of my dealing with those frustrations. What you're going to see now after this clip ends is you're going to see me actually flying this scoop from the cockpit. I also do one using the incorrect method, and then I'll be at the tail end of this video. Alright, and welcome to my first video I'm making in Flight Sim 2024. This is mainly in reaction to a lot of forum posts I've been seeing and people struggling with doing efficient and effective scoops in the CL-415. I'm not an expert, but I have managed to get to the point where I'm reliably flying extended attack missions without smoking the engines. I'm actually going to get into this really quick because long-windedness is really not going to help any people who are kind of beating their heads against this. So, very quickly, the number one thing that I keep seeing a lot of people who are struggling with these is they get slow and they let the plane settle in the water. Once you do that, your hull drag shoots up so much that it's almost every time better to just drop what you've scooped, get off the water, and try again. So, very quickly, I'm going to run you through my process, which has so far worked for me pretty well. Gets me in and out of the water efficiently and keeps me from smoking my engines. Right now I'm over Lake Fort Gibson in Oklahoma. We recently had a little bit of snow, so it's kind of cool seeing that reflected on the ground there. Kind of an aside there. So, very first step, get this thing in the water. And I'm going to pull up the EFB, which actually shows the scooping checklist after I've done this, to kind of show you where I found my entry point into kind of coming to grips with this monster. So, alright. So, keeping my airspeed managed, like 110 is about as high as I want to go. Pull our throttles back and start getting some flaps in. And you can be fairly aggressive with this thing getting on the water. It can take a fairly decent thumping. Alright, so probes are off. And once I start flaring, I automatically start pulling my flaps up to 10 degrees. Alright, now we get her in the water. And we throttle up. We gotta keep our speed up. Get a little back pressure. We want to just skim the water. We are not landing, we are scooping. Think surfing. Oh. And unfortunately, the throttle, I'm still getting used to it, so we're going to do this at an 80% throttle here. Alright, tanks are full. Just going to increase that back pressure a bit. Fly it in ground effect. Accelerate. We're going to stay low. A little oscillation there. And pull our flaps out. We want to be 0 flaps and in ground effect. And you can see we start getting some serious airspeed there. And once we get 110, about 110 knots, it's very easy, very controllable. And doing it this way, I have not ever damaged the engines. And I can get this thing in and out of the water fairly efficiently. So we're going to dump what we've scooped. And I'm going to show you what happens when you get slow. And then I'm going to go into the checklist and kind of the boring stuff. But basically, the trick to a successful scoop is get yourself to 10 degrees of flaps as soon as possible. Throttle up, keep your speed up. Do not let this thing settle. So we're going to do all that advice I just gave you. We're going to disregard it. We're going to fly it like we're, trying to get the beaver in on just a glassy lake surface for a nice, Alaska bush landing. We're not doing any work. We're just having a nice weekend stroll with our big float plane. So we're going to flare. Now, throttle response on this thing is very slow, so that's another thing you got to wrestle. So bring it down, just kind of gently touch the water. You see how slow we are? All right, now we're going to start scooping. We're going to add all that weight. And I'm going to release all back pressure on the yoke. We're just going to let this thing, do what it wants to do. We're going to settle. And we're going to keep full flaps in, because a lot of people are, it's counterintuitive to think you got to take your lifting devices out to get free. But drag is your enemy here, both the fluid drag on the hull and the atmospheric drag, aerodynamic drag from the flaps. So we're going to throttle up, and I'm going to turn away from the sun so you can actually read that airspeed indicator. You notice, I am not breaking free 50 knots, and I am beating the crap out of these engines. I can run them all the way to red line, and I just cannot do it with those flaps in. Bring them up, get a little more airspeed. It's a little better, but you see that shoreline's coming up pretty fast. Bring it back up to 10 degrees flaps, where we should be. And it's just struggling to break 100. Now let's put some back pressure on the yoke. Try to get this thing out of the trough and back on the step. Alright, got the nose attitude up. Finally break free. But you see, we were beating those engines to death. The inner turbine temperature is screaming at us. The oil pressure is probably not liking it. And we're still having really poor performance on that liftoff. Because I didn't take my flaps out, we're struggling to gain altitude at full throttle. Take those flaps out, and we start to fall, which allows us to get our nose down. But you hear that AOA alarm going off, kind of chirping at us. So we're going to get rid of this water. I'm going to climb us up, get us kind of established into a decent, decent cruise here. And then we're going to bring up the EFB with our checklists, because there actually is a water scooping checklist in the EFB. So go to aircraft, checklists, in-flight, normal water pickup. All of this stuff is just kind of systems, not really, super relevant. They say flaps 15. I've done it in flaps 15, but flaps 10 for me seems to work better, so I can really get that airspeed up. I am not telling you how to fly a real CL-415. I'm telling you how to fly the one in the simulator. So flaps 15, you just seem to have a little too much drag. But I guess we'll demonstrate that. Pull our power back. Since we're slow, we're going to go ahead and go to our full 25 degrees of flaps. We're going to turn right back at the water. Roll out. Yeah, throttle response on this thing is not anywhere near what you'd expect from the fire, because they teach you how to do this in the Fire Boss, and then they just kind of throw you at the Super Scooper and say, good luck. So, understandably, a lot of people are having a hard time with that. Alright. Drop the nose. Cut power a little bit so we can keep that descent in. We're going to go ahead 15 degrees of flaps. Power up right before we touch. Alright, power up on the water. Probes open. Just want to skim. So we got about 60% torque in here. Alright, tanks are full. We're going to bump the power up a little bit because I've been able to get this thing off the water at 70. high on the step, minimum drag in the water. Alright, we'll have to roll in a little more power here. But you see, we're just struggling at 15 degrees flaps. It's just not... It can be done, but for me, keeping that airspeed up with 10 degrees flaps is just a whole lot faster, a whole lot more efficient. But you notice on that, I didn't even brake. Yeah, that was 77% torque there. We're still in ground effect. Go ahead and bring those flaps back up so we can actually get some airspeed and get out of here.
Alright, so this is that very poor technique that I demonstrated earlier. You notice how low I'm letting it settle. We're letting it get slow, and this is just a great illustration. You can see just the surface area on those flaps. That is just a massive amount of aerodynamic drag. So the lift, and plus, flaps 25, that's for landing. There's no scenario where they recommend 25 for takeoff. That's just, that's to give you a steeper descent angle on your landings. Really, if you're trying to do this with full flaps, you're just fighting against all that drag. You have to bring them in a little, like we showed earlier. 15 works. My experience has been 10 works even better. Been able to get in and off some really little lakes with this thing at 10 degrees flaps, and even that maneuverability you have on the surface of the water when you're on the step and you're fast and you're light is that you can follow rivers in this thing. It's not nearly as nimble as the Fireboss, obviously, but you can do some pretty impressive things with this thing, so long as you keep it, light on the water. You see, that's probably my best shot of this thing on step that I've ever gotten. And it pulls away cleanly once you get your drag down and you get your speed up. Like I said, I like doing 10 degrees of flaps because the second I break free, I take those out, put the nose down, we ride ground effect until we get 110 knots and can pull away.